Hi, it's your homegirl Lisa with some audaciousness. I want to show off a new outfit I got. Is this not amazing? I'm about to go overseas and see a couple of my favorite bands, and so I wanted something like, there's a heat wave, wanted something sexy, but whew. So, I have been up to no good. I have really been up to no good. Hold on, let me adjust this camera. There we go. Yeah. So today I want to talk about the audaciousness of misogyny, motherhood, and slut shaming. As you guys know, I was born in a very conservative town in Welch, West Virginia, to a girl barely 16 who got kicked out of high school and crashed out. And if you recall, my dad abandoned me and was a heroin addict. And you also recall that I was my mother's favorite target. I was the scapegoat. I did not know, oh my gosh, when I tell you, I was violently beat every day that I was in her care. So, as you can imagine, I preferred being with my great-grandmother or my grandmother. And my mom was just, oh my gosh, she is a narcissist. She was a narcissist. Even if she hadn't gotten pregnant at 15, she should never have bred with anyone. She was a horrible mother, a horrible wife. Everything about her is horrible. Well, back to me. So, I grew up with a very childlike sense of reality because I was in survival mode. And so I really did not have a sense of how predatory people are, even though my mother was an alpha predator, right? So the next thing you know, fast forward, I have 2 children with a man 16 years older than me who's now dead because he was a chain-smoking food addict who would gain weight and lose weight and gain weight and lose weight. And as you can imagine, once I started maturing, I proceeded to move forward, and eventually our marriage ended. Well, he never really raised any of his children. All of the women did, me included, and he never gave me a single dime of child support. So I would work 6 days a week to support my children. And because I loved my children, I would get jobs where I could spend time with them after school. So I was waiting tables, and mind you, even though my mother was my neighbor I wanted to go to nursing school, and I would ask her to watch my children so I could go to nursing school, because my ex-husband was a truck driver and he was always gone. And my mother said, no. Because I was never going to be allowed to exceed or excel. And of course, I internalized all that because I wanted to give my children so much more. But when you are dealing with boomers who are fueled on jealousy, envy, and resentment, they are not going to help you get ahead unless you just beat the shit out of them emotionally, and that's not who I am. So I just mommied it until I broke up with him, and then he never gave me a single dime of child support. Let that sink in. And I did not take him to court because I also, though I was unaware of it, was parenting him. Anyway, he proceeded to meet a lot lizard and move to Florida North Georgia, and parent her children. And the only reason my children ever got to see their dad is because I made him. I made him get them on the summers. I made him call them. I made him get them on Christmas. I would drive more than halfway to St. Mary's, Georgia, which is on the Jacksonville border, and make him be a parent. Now, little did I know that I was basically letting him groom them to be bums, because that was a house of anything goes, eat whatever you want, no discipline, no structure. And see, I've always been the opposite. Anyway, in 2001, my narcissistic mother, hold on, this just seems a little bright. My narcissistic mother had verbally attacked her husband, who she love bombed into taking out money from his retirement so she could buy the land and the house she wanted. Well, as soon as she got what she wanted, she proceeded to torture him emotionally, psychologically, and verbally. And his son. And the weird thing is, this is before we talked about narcissism. So here I am, still trying to heal from my childhood and all my physical ailments. And as a woman, it's not real. Bowel disease is not real. Eat more fiber, drink more water. Are you exercising? Anyway, my mother got what she wanted. Oh, love bombing. We didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about love bombing and narcissism in the late 90s and early 2000s. I didn't know that the father of my sons was a covert narcissist, Peter Pan. And I didn't know that my mother is a malignant narcissist. Anyway, I'm working 6 days a week as a waitress, juggling all that alone with no family support, none. I'm doing all of it on my own. I have always been hyper vigilant about my children performing well in school. Anyway, My mom ran off her husband, and she, being the fool that she is, got a adjustable mortgage, and the rate changed and she couldn't afford her mortgage. So what does she do? The same woman that would not watch her grandchildren so her daughter could take night classes called me and love bombed me into moving in with her and paying half of her bills. And all I could see is that it would be a better, better school district for my sons. I would be helping my mother. Because I'm a service-oriented human who believes in helping. Anyway, so I move in with my narcissist mother who, oh yeah, part of the love bomb was that she was going to put, and I didn't ask for this, but part of the love bomb was that she was going to put my name on the deed of the house. She never did, because narcissists are liars. They're liars, right? But that's okay. Your girl is working 6 days a week in a restaurant, waiting tables. And now my children are in a very nice neighborhood, and I get off work and I ride bikes with them, and I play basketball with them, and I throw football with them, and I mother them. And the whole while, my mother was doing anything that she possibly could to convey to them that I was too strict. So if I asked them to put the trash cans out at the street, she would literally tell me that I was trying to run them like a drill sergeant. So there's this history in white families where mothers hate their daughters and treat them like servants, and they worship the ground their lazy sons walk on. And so I didn't even realize that that was what was happening, and that my children were being groomed to be misogynists by their grandmother. And throughout this whole story, I'm catching strays from every direction. If my kids go stay with my sister Pam, she's giving them Surge Cola, any kind of video game they want, any kind of candy they want. I didn't live that way. If they're around my mom, she's doing the same thing. If they're at their dad's house, they're, it's a free-for-all. Everybody, eat what you want, sleep when you want, wake up when you want. And mind you, I'm also trying to exercise. I'm also cooking for my whole family. I'm also push mowing my mother's acre of grass yard because I'm service oriented, right? The regret I feel for giving any part of my body, mind, or soul to narcissists, everybody that has a narcissistic family system, which they all on some level are, but if you are the person that gives a shit, you will give them your blood and they'll say, is that all? And then you'll give them the marrow and they'll say, is that all? Nothing is ever good enough. So mind you, I'm not happy for obvious reasons. And there's this shadow war going on where my mother is like love bombing my kids and making up all these weird. She would literally tell me that my middle son's nostrils were so small that he needed like breathe right strips to breathe. And I'm like, he was just fine until we moved in with you. Just little things like that. You know, all of a sudden my son's behaviors started reverting back to being little children, to where one day my 10-year-old son Alex is in the bathroom taking a dump, and I hear, "Hey, mom, and I'm like, "What, Alex?" Because I just worked a fucking 9-hour shift on my feet. You know, he wanted me to wipe his ass at 9 or 10, and I said, "Wipe your own ass." And then when I told my mom, she said, "But Lisa, his arms are too short to..." What? So in the everybody's screaming we need the matriarchy. I don't want to live in either, because the matriarchy is permissive. The matriarchy wants to give everybody a ice cream for breakfast, and as long as they have everybody, as well, let's say this: the girls are out mowing the grass and working 6 days a week, and the boys need somebody to wipe their ass and basically feed them. Anyway, after about a year of this, I had had enough, and I had paid to get, and I was 29, and I looked in the mirror and I said, "Girl, you are undervaluing yourself." And I went and got a job at Uptown Cabaret, where I was a performer. We don't say stripper anymore, we say performer. And even as a stripper performer, I would work in the afternoons because I loved my kids and I wanted to spend time with them. And I had my sister helping me with them. She was nannying because, yet again, my mother would not help me, even though I was paying half of this biatch's bills. And she became so jealous and envious of me that she started talking to the husband that she had tormented. And, you know, Ronnie, God bless his soul in heaven, he was an alcoholic, and alcoholics are easy to steer. So the next thing I know, it's May 1st, 2002, and I am at Uptown Cabaret bored because it's a slow night, and I typically would work till about 9. I would go in before 4:30 because if you worked at lunch, you would not have to tip the house. So I would only have to tip the DJ and the bouncers. And that night, a group of guys came in and they were celebrating. It was May 1st, 2002, and they were celebrating the birthday of my ex. Let's call him Wildo, the dildo. Anyway, Wildo comes I greet them, and they tell me he's the birthday boy, and I sit on his lap, and he's got this really feminine shirt on, but whatever. I have to go on stage, and a Pearl Jam song comes on, and some drunk dude comes up and like tips me a tenner, and here comes Wildo. And Wildo conspiratorially called me over to him, and I'm, doing my little and he whispers, "Don't trust any of them." Talking about men. And I was like, yeah, no shit. And he gave me his phone number. Well, as I told you, I was basically my mother's husband. She even told me I was better than a husband. And I was over it. And Wildo love bombed me. And the next thing I knew, so my kids were going to be out of school and they were going to be going to their dad's for the summer. And Wildo was like, move in, move in, move in, because, narcissists cannot be alone. So, and he also said, hey, my mom lives in Florida. I want you to go to my sister's graduation with me. And I said, oh, that's great. I have to drop my sons off in Georgia. So that's perfect. So he's in his truck. I follow in my car. I park my car in my ex's driveway. I drop my children off to go have Lollapalooza candy parties all summer. And he and I go to Florida. And when I tell you, the vibe down there was so weird. I am not a drinker. I know everybody likes to project that onto me, but his family wasn't a drinker either, but they kept shoving wine to me. And I ended up getting drunk. And after my ex-sister-in-law's graduation, we ended up at Senior Frogs, where I was sitting on the banister, and this Australian guy, because, see, now I realize that my ex was never into me. I was just a placeholder. So an Australian guy was like, hey, that's not safe. And I said, mate, you might want to mind your own business. And I walked over and I picked up his crab cake sandwich and I took a bite of it. And he got so mad at me that he left. Anyway, I know I'm like, but these details are funny because I'm like reliving them and I'm understanding, number one, I was groomed to perform for narcissists, and that my mother had successfully converted, because narcissism is a cult, and that my mother had successfully converted my sons to worship at the cult, and that my ex and his whole family are narcissists. Anyway, the cult of narcissism. So I got really drunk that day. My ex and his brother had to walk me out of Senior Frogs. I woke up mortified, and my ex never mentioned anything. And I thought that was weird because I was really embarrassed. I don't drink. And I had gotten drunk because they kept pushing alcohol on me. And see, that's what narcissists do. They feed off of the ability to control you. And if you're either constantly performing duties for them or in a state of embarrassment, you're not examining them or their behavior and what's, the fact that they're vampires, energy, financially, psychically, anyway. So Wildo, I told you guys I was raised by a crash out queen who loved to find rageful alcoholics to mingle with, or brides of Christ. So I was very naive of the way that the world works. And when I was in Florida meeting Wildo's family, he walked up to me. His sister was standing beside me, and he walked up to me and he said, look at her collarbone. Look how beautiful she is. He even look at all those eyelashes. She even has eyelashes in the corner of her eyes. And I was like, me and his sister Pepsi were like this. And I thought, well, Lisa, you're a hick from West Virginia, and this must be what love is. Theatrics, you know. So, get back to Charlotte. I moved me and my boys in with Wildo. He was such a vampire that he would come and watch me work at Uptown Cabaret. And now I realize it wasn't that he was worried about somebody stealing me. I think he loved watching men want me because he's not heteronormative. No, he's not. Women, stop pretending that men who are performatively masculine are straight. Because there is nothing worse than a down low. They are worse. Any kind of idea you have about vindictiveness and revenge, a down low is a master. So I move in with Wildo, and he has an old roommate who was a Vietnam vet and had a degree, the dude's probably dead now, a degree in psychology. And one day this old guy came up to me because it was weird. There was this weird energy in Wildo's house. Very weird energy. Hold on. Let's get a little, come on. Let's get a little closer. Anyway, weird energy in Wildo's house. And he came up to me and he said, do not ever leave your sons alone with him. And I did not know what he meant because I was not raised around any homosexuality. None. The only homosexuality I witnessed was on TV, and it was theatrically. Whee! Well, that's not my ex. So I thought he was pissed because he didn't want to move. And now don't forget, I'm 29. I have no experience. I've been a single mother forever. And along with supporting my sons, I was supporting my mother and working 6 days a week. Anemic, undiagnosed ADHD on the autism spectrum, bowel disease, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, you name it. I was dealing with it. So all of his theatrics and histrionics, I just thought, you're not worldly. You've never been anywhere. You've never been out of the country. You've only been from West Virginia to North Carolina and South Carolina. What do you know? And so I would perform more. And I regulated myself to regulate him and hyper focus on my sons. Anyway, when I met him, he was waiting tables at Sullivan's Steakhouse and interning during the day for free doing monster trucks. And he was, and I'm sure still is, very, very salty because he, through a stroke of sheer luck, was going to high school in Asheville when they shot Last the Mohican, so he got to be an extra on the set. And that experience, you know, I have noticed this thing where people, where if they have a 5-minute experience of doing something, they hyperfixate on that experience and project fantasies. So Colonel Del Dye taught those guys how to look like soldiers, and so now my ex thinks he went into the Marine Corps. My ex got to be on set with Daniel Day-Lewis, so he thought he was going to also be Daniel Day-Lewis. You know, you see how that works? I know y'all know lots of narcissists that way. They think, oh, if I touch a Blarney Stone, a leprechaun is going to jump out of the... Anyway, he had dated a wig mistress that he met on set, and he got to go to London, and he realized that he has the right to abode because his grandmother was according to him, English war bride. So I'm going to imagine he also thinks he is Winston Churchill. Anyway, so he lived over there, and he got to go to drama school, and he got to learn how to be a loudmouth, performative, attention-seeking, bad actor. Y'all, there's a lot of actors that think if they're in front of a camera that they deserve to be acknowledged by the Emmys and the Oscars and all this other stuff. Anyway, in the course of our relationship, I saw him perform one time in Midsummer's Night's Dream, and it was awful. He actually has a picture of it on his Facebook, and he should take it down because it was awful. There was no performance. It was just vapid. And the poor woman that had to pretend to be attracted to him. But I digress. So, I meet him. I have saved $25,000 as a single mother who was just work. And guess what this dummy did? I paid off his credit cards, and his daddy, because, he's a Nepo baby, his daddy gave him 20 grand and he bought his first system. And so with the help of a woman and a daddy, he was on his way to being the God that he is now. So, along the way, I make him buy a house. I got to be honest with y'all. That human is the most toxic person I have ever been around, to the point that when we first started seeing each other and he kissed me, his breath was so fucking awful, I would gag. And I said something to his sister, and she literally said to me, yeah, it's like squirrels. His sister Pepsi said, it's like squirrels go up to him and shit in his mouth when he's asleep. And I had to make myself say something. Y'all, this is not the first time I have had to tell a man, a white man, that his breath and teeth were disgusting, but I digress. He blamed it on England. He blamed it on England and said, oh, the dentist over there is so awful. That funky breath was coming out of his soul, trying to warn me to run. And then when I kissed him, my entire mouth broke out into ulcers. And I honestly wonder if it's like some form of herpes, because I had never had anything like that. And I didn't go to the doctor because it was in my mouth. You know what I'm saying? I just, got some hydrogen peroxide and healed myself, as women do. Now, I've been tested for sexually transmitted diseases, and if it is herpes, it's not one that they have signified as sexually transmitted. Anyway, and I focused on having the first home I've ever had at that point. And he was addicted to work, so I had the first time to think that I've ever had. And, I bonded quickly with all of my neighbors and focused on healing. Did tons of yoga. His disassociative mother introduced me to yoga, and I took it and ran with it. Y'all, narcissists are created mostly by women. It makes my brain hurt because I see all the time good men and good women trying to direct their children into being thoughtful, compassionate, service-oriented humans, while there are these bad actors feeding them fairy tales and delusions of grandeur. Let me tell y'all about his mother. She dumped his father because she got bored, and she took their two children back to Louisiana and dumped them on her mother, and she proceeded to go get in a relationship with a drug trafficker that worked for the Coast Guard. And then she bragged to me about teaching aerobics and snorting cocaine off the bathroom sink. See, these people that are not grounded love to create grandiose ideas of themselves and lie to their children and not parent their children. I parented mine and I'm not popular. How could I have any effect when there was nothing but a bunch of narcissists telling them to do a daily crucifixion and that they are God's chosen? Anyway, his mother told me that the reason her oldest daughter hates her is because in a previous life, they were no, hold on, let me get the story right. His mother told me that her daughter hates her because in a previous life, they were prostitutes during the time of Jack the Ripper, and Jack the Ripper killed her, the daughter. And she told me that the reason her and her golden child Wildo have tension is because they were Native Americans in another life and she stole his horse. Do y'all see a histrionic, magical thinking, grandiose theme? Let's see, what other ridiculous things did that irresponsible deadbeat mom say? You know, my ex told me that she would have sex with his stepfather, Rick, with the door open. And that she would let Rick watch porn in front of her children because she was so zonked out on coke. And then there's the story of when Rick owed money to some people and they came and set the house on fire, and my ex, as a little boy,